Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in live to our second stop of the Eccles Alumni Road Trip. Today, we have an incredible panel lined up to discuss the future of the entertainment industry. We'd like to, of course, thank our generous sponsors, CR England, for supporting the Eccles Alumni Road Trip. We are just thrilled to have their support. Before we get started today, I'd like to introduce you to our wonderful moderator, John. John is a 29-year veteran of the syndicated television business, and he has such a unique knack for recognizing talent and combining it for incredible success. You are going to be just incredibly surprised at all of his hits that he has been partnered with, such as the Dr. Phil Show, Rachel Ray, Oprah Winfrey. I mean, John is the real deal. So we are so excited to have him join us today. And I'm going to turn it over to John to introduce our incredible panel.
Thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate that. Hopefully I'll live up to those nice words. Welcome to the panel. All of you, Emily Richards, Christopher Hill, Ben Hawley, really looking forward.
Just a brief technical difficulty, so please just stay tuned. 2020 keeps throwing curveballs, so we will be back in just a moment.
She said there's technical difficulties. Says it's on.
John, you are good to go. We can see you.
Okay. Hi, everyone, again. Thank you, Ling Che, for that really nice introduction. Looking forward to today. We're all going through a pretty crazy time in our personal lives and our business lives. And, they're obviously overlapping into how people are living their day-to-day and how they're consuming media. And I think we have a great panel here with broad interest that can talk about how they're dealing with it in their own particular ways. With every challenge, I think comes great opportunity. And it's at times like this that you could either kind of fall into the shadow of despair and say, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world as we know it. Or you can look for the ray of light and say, what am I going to do with the new set of circumstances I've been delivered and make the changes that are necessary in order to bring the profits to your companies, back to where they were pre-pandemic. And hopefully, as things progress, we're all going to move back to a time where things are back to some sort of normal. But at the same time, I don't think we can have the expectations that the world is going to ever be completely the same. And with that, I think is going to be where the opportunity comes from. So I would like to bring our panel on and not waste any time so we can get to a lot of questions. If the panel could bring their mute off and their videos up, I'd like each of you to introduce yourselves. And why don't we start with Emily?
Hey, everybody. I'm a recording artist. I've released 17 albums, and I just finished my first Broadway musical, Babylon. And I'm also the CEO and co-founder of a digital music company, Artist Tech Media. We run a website called ccmixter.org. It's a global community of musicians that create art with meaning in the cloud. And I guess I would say I've been kind of a pandemic-like person since the beginning. of this century with mp3.com. I had my music there. It's one of the first artists to ever allow streaming of music before people knew what streaming was. And then I ran MP3 Tunes, which was the first music in the cloud company before people knew what the cloud was. And now I'm running the first social music network where people create and collaborate all around the world using Creative Commons licenses. So I feel lucky that I've been part of disruptive technologies, and I feel like there are huge opportunities in times like this for change and evolution. I went to the U. I graduated with a degree in accounting, and I worked at PricewaterhouseCoopers for 11 years as a CPA. I specialized in transaction services. It's great to be here.
Thank you, Emily. Christopher Hill, could you tell us a little bit about your career?
Yeah, so my name is Christopher Hill. Graduated from the U in '04 and then received my JD from there. Currently work at the Walt Disney Company. I've been here for about 6 years, 5 of which spent in a strategy business development context. And the other year, this current year, is more of a client-facing negotiation, rights negotiation. So my group is responsible for all monetization of the Walt Disney Company's content, whether that's from direct to consumer, Disney Plus to ESPN, to ABC. The only kind of content distribution that we do not touch is distribution to theaters. It's handled through a different group, but obviously been pretty disruptive for us, particularly with Disney Plus over the last 6 months. So pass it over to Ben.
So I also work for Disney. Worked for the company for about 12 years. Started my time with the company in 2008, fall of 2008 at Walt Disney World. And so I've sort of loved going from one crisis to another in the company's history. So coming into the parks and resorts business at that point in time was a fascinating learning experience. I spent about 10 years in financial planning and analysis supporting the parks and resorts businesses in various capacities, mainly Walt Disney World, Disneyland as well. And then wanting to broaden my career a little bit within the Disney umbrella, looked for an opportunity in the media segment and found that kind of continuing the financial planning function, and joined the media group about 1.5 years ago, just at the time of the acquisition of 21st Century Fox. So again, it's been a wild ride, transitions with some interesting times with the company kind of facing huge challenges, right? So it's a fascinating seat to be in finance. Obviously, you get a front row seat on how the company is responding to a lot of these challenges that we face. And so it's been an interesting journey, and looking forward to more of it. Excited about today's conversation.
Okay, well, why don't we just jump right in full throttle into, I guess, the posed question to each of you in your industry. What has been the pandemic's effect on just the core of your business? And why don't we start with the planner, Ben? I'm sure they're getting a lot of questions of how to plan out of this.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating, right? So I've characterized the impacts, at least on the media side, 3 big impacts. Number one, all of our live action production was shut down in mid-March, and for a period of months, it's been kind of slowly restarting of late, obviously under very strict new safety protocols. Interestingly, in our business, right, we got to see that kind of live action shutdown, but at the same time, animation kind of continued on, adapted well in the work from home environment, which was kind of fascinating to see. And then we also have core businesses like the ABC News Group and our own television stations that had to still be up and running because they're critical functions in informing the population. So you kind of got to see both sides of that. And then, in terms of our business, right, the advertising revenue obviously took a big hit, right, as advertisers pulled way back on their own budgets and people had to kind of scale back and decide how to prioritize their spending. And then the other interesting sort of observation that we made, obviously during quarantine, everybody's sort of watching TV, right? And consumption, went way up across streaming platforms, across our other platforms as well. And so it's been interesting to kind of see that, impact, flow through business. And to your point, John, it's been interesting to think about how do we plan to get out of it, right? So in my world, that means lots of scenario planning, right? So we've got lots of different iterations. We're doing more and more forecasts, trying to kind of get clarity on what things look like. And I would say the major focus in our world has been how do we get production back up and running and do it in a safe and an appropriate way in this new environment. And so we're kind of in the midst of that and testing and adjusting, trying to figure out how that looks and then how that plays through the financials.
Thank you. Chris, on the sales side, how is your world changing?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of twofold a little bit to what Ben was saying. I think that there's, how you're going to properly monetize content was really disruptive across our business, particularly, in April and March when sports was shut down. Obviously a huge driver of revenue for the company, and something that we had to think about from both like a social aspect with what's going on in the world, but also from delivering value to our shareholders' perspective. So that was challenging. In terms of how we kind of thought about the business, I thought it was, I was really proud of the company. When we released Frozen 2 early to Disney Plus, and we missed out on a monetization window, where we could have really driven home a little bit more value, but we elected to put that forward, and then we had to take some big bets. Putting Mulan in out at a $30 price point and, going around theaters and knowing that they're huge partners of ours, right? Like they're in a post-pandemic world, we're going to need AMC and Cinemark, and they're going to need us. But at the same time, we had to meet the consumers where they were. So I think that's kind of the biggest kind of thing that we've been thinking about is, hey, we need to make sure that we're delivering on kind of our KPIs and our metrics that, that Ben's planning for, and, do it in a smart, efficient way, but not think that we're going to be in a COVID world forever. But, there's going to be differences in a post-COVID world, but just making sure that we're thinking about the different scenarios and how to, drive value.
Thank you. And Emily, you come from the music side of the business, always a challenging place, or has been for quite a while, and you've been disrupting it for a lot of years. But how's the pandemic disrupting you at this point?
The most difficult thing for musicians in our community is this shutdown of studios, not being able to record in studio. We're grateful that we have such advanced at-home technology like Pro Tools and Ableton Live, and so that has compensated for that, although people that are working in studios have really suffered. Of course, live performance in concert halls, festivals, and also live musical theater has been utterly crushed. The musical that I was in pre-production for, all of that came to a screeching halt. And so there have been definite challenges, but what we've seen at CC Mixter, my company, is a creative explosion, because creators had so much time on their hands, and influencers and YouTubers are seeking music to put in their consumer created content. And we actually had massive bandwidth overages in March, April, and May, because we were unprepared for how many people would be moving to online content creation. So that's been great. And also I've seen just an increase in the meaning of the art that has been created, because people are digging deeper with the suffering that's come through this pandemic, with the issues of racial injustice and economic disparity, political corruption. All of these things are rising up in the art that's being created around the world, not just in the United States. So I feel like that's an encouraging thing. And now, as business minds, how do we capitalize on that new powerful content? And I think that's our new challenge.
I should probably take a moment and chime in a little bit about parks and resorts as well, having had some experience there. I'm away from the business a little bit, so I don't know all the detail, but certainly if you think about the umbrella of the entertainment world, right? They've had massive impacts, had to shut down for longer than had ever has ever happened. When I was at Walt Disney World, we shut down a couple of times for hurricanes that blew through Orlando, and I remember working through the impact of just a single day or a day and a half of those venues being down was just staggering, right? And so to think about what's been going on now is a little bit unfathomable, right? And they're doing their best to sort of get back up and running. Obviously, Walt Disney World has been allowed to reopen and kind of is working their way back. Disneyland not yet. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to evolve. And obviously that experience is going to be changed significantly for guests who are going today. And so it's an interesting, impacts across the broad industry of entertainment, certainly. Oh, John, you're on mute.
There we go. Sorry. Thanks, everyone. We're starting to have some questions come in from the outside, so why don't we take one of those here. This comes from Mark. How does Disney and ESPN view the future of esports as part of their portfolio? What opportunities do you see in the future for esports as part of the entertainment industry?
Yeah.
Who would like to take that?
Yeah.
Chris, you seem appropriate for that.
Yeah, right in my wheel. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that, we talked about, and again, just don't want to like dive into anything too proprietary, but obviously discuss esports at length and what constitutes a sport. And obviously, the U is kind of a pioneer and with respect to e-gaming. I think there's a place for it. I think that the company, as you could see, is one of the first to kind of like of the major media brands, outside of like a Twitch, for example, but that is really looking at esports and understands the value of esports. So I think that you're going to see more of it. I think that, in a live linear view, like on an ESPN linear channel, it's a little different kind of experience. Or I think you're going to see it a lot more on like an ESPN Plus or something that's a little bit more time shifted, just because of bandwidth constraints. There's a finite amount of time that you can have on, ESPN1, for example, if you have a Utah football game, where, it's a lot better served, at least from my perspective, on a digital platform. But I definitely think it's something the company's been fully engaged in, leaned into, sees a lot of value in. And, we've had, I was at the business development pitch when we decided to kind of go into e-gaming. And it was interesting when you think about the metrics of like what constitutes a sport, competition, speed, strength, athleticism, et cetera. And it definitely, at least, those of us at ESPN definitely consider it a sport and think that there's a really bright future for it.
Thank you. Kind of an offshoot of that seems to me to be that people have more and more time right now. You notice it in all fronts. It seems, by at about 3 o'clock, a bunch of people have already been working all day and they have time to do something else. So they're either consuming a lot more media. I think there seems to also be a fair amount of user content even being put together, which kind of has its own different effects on all the businesses out there. Emily, in your area, are you seeing kind of an uptick in that? Or are you seeing people kind of coming from different direction, more interest in that arena, more usership? What's happening in your area?
Well, I'd say user-generated content is definitely huge. It already was, if you look at influencers, YouTubers, podcasters, I mean, this was, already on the rise, but with the pandemic and like you said, everyone's extra time and the technology to support these things. I mean, there's so many podcasting platforms and gaming platforms and YouTube, Quibi, Vimeo, that there has just been a flood of consumer generated content. What I feel is the future that I would love to talk to Chris and Ben about is how do you open up some of your content for collaboration with those types of people? Because that seems to be what people really want. They want a read, write experience. And so the Gen Z audience, you can tell by their Instagram accounts, they love to create. And how John and I met actually was through a content creation project using old episodes of I Love Lucy. So old brands that maybe are kind of in the back drawer, and reinvigorating them by allowing a collaborative remixing, if you will, of content. We are seeing a huge demand for that in our circles, especially in Europe, where we know our content's being remixed in completely different permutations and genres. So it seems like the world's hungry for that, and I think it's a big opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, at least from, and Ben and I are obviously supremely biased. We're part of a company that was a media company that was, founded by an artist, has never been bought or sold, and right now is a tech firm and doesn't own it, and the telecom communications firm in Dallas doesn't own us. Or so I think like the artist aspect of Disney is definitely there, like the storytelling piece. I think where those synergies lie, at least like from like Disney Plus, for example, is launching like a watch party where people can kind of like further engage with the content. I think like from Ben and I's perspective, being so in the weeds on the business, that like I think that definitely finding some synergies with somebody like yourself about how to like further engage with the content on those things is probably the next step. But I don't know, Ben, if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a fascinating question. I don't know that I've got experience to lend to that question, but an interesting, thought-provoking question.
All right, well, let's move on to another question that's come in from one of the viewers. Have you experimented with ways to keep the consumer, viewer, audiences feel interactive to programs they watch? So a little different bend on that, as opposed to, maybe taking the content that you have. How is there kind of a live opportunity, I guess, would maybe be the question here. Is that being kind of played with, where the user or the viewer feels like they're somehow participating? Is that being explored at all at the studio side?
I'm not sure, right, to what extent that's being explored, right? From my vantage point, what comes to mind, right, is to the extent that content is relatable and something people can connect to. I mean, maybe it's not interactive in the literal sense of the word, right? But to the extent that content is something that you connect with, right, and you feel like it voices something that you feel and know, right, it makes it incredibly compelling, right? You think about sort of the future of the industry, right? And I sort of, my personal belief is content is going to drive that future, right? And obviously with the Black Lives Matter movement and everything that's been going on in our environment over the past few months, right, that's made that critically important, right, to really make content that resonates across a broad and diverse spectrum of individuals. And to the extent that companies can do that, and I think we are making every effort to do that, I think we'll find success in engaging that consumer audience.
Well, I think the kind of the bend from this question kind of now comes from the people who are the participants as well. And this question comes in from Kenny, who says, with the majority of customer consumption now streaming, how does everyone feel about how the market is compensated financially via streaming? Example, Spotify pays artists 0.03 cents a stream. So,
And I
you know,
try
I guess
that.
I think it's time for Emily to chime in, the person who might be compensated unfairly.
This has been a struggle for musicians since the digital revolution. And that's why losing live performance has been so utterly devastating for us. I am hopeful as more and more streaming demand increases for music, that we can have a little more power to increase that revenue per stream. Spotify isn't the only one that's very low. YouTube is our #1 source of streaming revenue, at least in my part of the music industry. And it's still just so minute, and it's really devalued music, I believe, as an artist and as a CEO of a music company. I'm hopeful that that will change, and that it's just an adjustment, because the old industry for music is still in its unraveling. And so it takes time to rebuild the new model. I am not the best at revenue generating, I have to admit. So maybe Chris and I can have a little conversation later. I'm not as good at strong arming with the majors. But I am hopeful about it. And we have to just get more and more creative with how are we going to generate revenue. And that's why we've opened up our content. Where we actually make the most money right now is allowing other creators to use our content in their creation. So we're piggybacking. So we not only get a stream every time, like, a video on my YouTube channel gets streamed, I get a royalty, but I get a royalty for the millions of videos that my music is in. And that's really where our opportunity is in the moment.
Excellent. Well, I think that's been a frustration for forever. Artists have kind of had that struggle for years, and hopefully, as these new formats continue to show themselves to us, the powers to be will find a way to put a little bit of extra money in everybody else's pocket. I guess the interesting thing that's happening right now, and it's a luxury that all of you are having on one side, but there's the kind of core business that used to be there that seems to be evaporating a bit. And the COVID has not helped that. So, if you look at the movie industry, one of the major windows of the film business has always been the theater. And the theaters are shut down right now. Disney just recently on their platform put Mulan up, which was huge. Obviously, a huge decision had to be made there at the studio to take probably a $200 million, $250 million budget film, forego a window that is traditionally been there to bring in a case of Mulan, maybe $300, $400, $500 million in domestic revenue, and put it out on Disney Plus for $30 for screening. How do you see that business kind of moving forward if we're struggling to get back into the theaters? Do you think that the money can actually be recouped through streaming, or is that just going to affect the budgets for films going forward? What's your thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously a pretty seminal decision that happened at obviously the upper echelons of the company. So I can't pretend like I had some say in it, but it was definitely something that we talked about as a team in terms of just like where the industry's going. It's definitely, and I think Ben would attest to this. I mean, it's fun to be in media because it is changing and it changes so quickly. So, we saw, at least, I've been in the media industry for about a decade, and, I've seen a shift from time shifted viewing, for example. We saw that. We saw, with Hulu and Netflix and now Disney Plus and others, and we've understood what content kind of resonates on a linear basis. Ben hit this earlier, ABC News, like that's a perfect forum. I think that the difficult decision about again, you kind of need to meet the consumer where they are. So Mulan, for example, we knew where the consumer was. They were at home, right? Like there was no real opportunity for them to go out into the theaters. And I don't, the theaters is going to always be a part of Disney's business. Getting people together and interacting is a core to our business. And we know that, and it's challenging. And it was really tough yesterday. And I think it was a hard day for Ben as well. You had 23,000 colleagues that, lost their jobs. And it's nothing that we want to do. We just, we know that our job is to go out there and try to drive revenue for the company. And one of those vehicles that we saw was, putting D+ through Milan. I'm supremely biased. I thought it was a success. Do I think that it's going to necessarily be the right decision for every film? No. I mean, we pushed back the release date on Black Widow, for example, right? Maybe it's the right decision for a Pixar movie where, it makes more sense on a smaller screen. I think that, again, we just have to address what's happening in the market at the time. And I think Mulan was a good example of like, hey, let's take a step and see what it looks like. And then, again, I just don't think we have like full visibility into what the market's going to look like in May, for example, versus now. But I think it was exciting. I think it was the right thing to do. It was difficult. We had to go to all of our app partners, Amazon, iOS and Apple, Android and Google. And, we had to renegotiate some contracts and figure some stuff out. And, there were some tense conversations and, they have certain windows where they're able to monetize content. And we had to go in and play the disruptor, or we felt like we were going to get disrupted. But, it's probably not the answer everybody wants to hear, but it's a little bit like we got to see, what happens next. But I think it was a smart decision by the company. I think it was bold. But that's not to say that, I see people going to theaters and, if people are not able to interact together, to Ben's point, in some way in the future, it's going to be a real challenge for our company because that's part of what we do.
This has been an interesting one. I don't really have experience to share on this other than a few sort of anecdotal things. I often place myself in the position of consumer and say to myself, what's my sort of reaction to what the company is doing or to what other companies are doing, right? And what was an interesting experience I had with that is Mulan released on Disney Plus was primo for me. I was sign me up, right? I was excited about the movie. My kids were excited about the movie. And the value prop was there for sure, right? And so it was a great opportunity. And I was talking to my team about it afterward and sort of getting a pulse. I'm like, oh, what do you guys think? And I've got a little bit of a younger, generation team, right? One of them's like, oh no, I don't want to see it if it's not in the theater, right? That theater experience is what I want. And so I'm not going to do it, right? It was interesting to see sort of the, polar opposites in that small little sample set, right? Imagine that's going on out in the broader consumer base, right? There are, folks that are going to eat that up and they're going to go after it. And the value proposition is there for them. For others, it's not. And, I think this becomes a tool in the arsenal and, part of a portfolio approach to, addressing demand where it is. You've said it well, Chris, a couple of times, right? That you got to go to where the consumers are and figure out how to maximize that. It'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time.
Your same discussion happened in our house. I was like, $30? No way. My wife was like, we're buying it. I was like, okay, I guess we're doing it.
If I may add something about Broadway in that regard, I'm part of a think tank here in LA with a Broadway production company who I've been working with for my own musical. And the discussions that we have are about, always trying to look for the opportunity and look on the bright side. And we definitely know the importance of being together in a space. Like to be in a theater space, to be in that synergetic space together to experience art and its message. But on the positive note, like for example, with the release of Hamilton, it's more accessible to people that never had access to this kind of theater before. Mm-hmm. And so that helps with a lot of issues that we're facing in our world, namely economic disparity. More people have access to this kind of entertainment that didn't previously. And so how do we take that opportunity and perhaps as we remold the live theater experience, is there something that we can learn from that to bring into our reemergence as we go back into those spaces together?
Yeah, I really believe that the user there'll be some whining, certainly, from people who, it was their Friday night experience, let's say, to go to a film, or it might have been their weekend experience to go to a concert, or to go to Broadway. And, the traditional consumption is what's changing, but I think there's also a huge amount of audience that is having no problem with paying $30 to see Mulan in their house. They get to see it where they want, when they want, and how they want. I thought it was a bold move. I think it was a brilliant move. And, you could sit there and continue to fight it, or you can try and learn how to deal with it. And I commend Disney for the move they made. I think that what is happening in the music business, that I'm witnessing a little bit through, Emily's eyes, has been interesting as well. And how some of the artists are finding ways where they normally would have, what, Emily, 130,000 people in an event, and and now they're trying to figure out a way they can do it socially distanced. Or we're watching the French Open right now with a stadium that holds 25,000 people or 50,000 people, or I'm not sure exactly how many fit into the French Open there, but there's all of maybe 1,000 people inside there right now. And that experience is phenomenal, I'm sure, for those people. But myself, I'm sitting here still enjoying incredible French Open coverage the way I always did. And I think cable networks are doing a great job of providing, a whole lot of different opportunities to look at it from different perspectives. Again, it's just evolution for all of us. So,
and I think to your point, John,
the question I have for you, Chris, to direct a direct question, is there still is that nagging thing that I dealt with for 29 years, which is the guys that are at the top, in your case Bob Iger, saying, where the hell's my money? And how do we find different ways to dig the puck out of the corner? I think that's really where this business needs to go. And so have you seen any creative ideas beyond kind of what's at the right in front of our nose, proposals of things? I think Emily mentioned Hamilton. I think that's interesting. Do you go after other content? What's the idea there?
Yeah, so I don't do much in terms of content acquisition. We talk a little bit about sports rights, with our programming colleagues, like when you're talking about ESPN Plus, for example, they'll come to us and be like, hey, what do you think about La Liga? We'll look at some of the metrics and then say, hey, this makes sense, or like Hamilton, for example, Emily brought up a great point, and I never thought about, the exposure of the content that, quote unquote, seems highbrow to some folks that wouldn't otherwise never have butted up against it. Obviously Disney, again, I'm hugely biased, has the best collection of IP entertainment rights, I think, in history. I don't know if a lot of people want to debate that. I would be happy to debate that with you. But I think in terms of like what you're talking about, John, about thinking in kind of an elastic sense, I think that there were some short-term solves. Like I think the bubble in Orlando was a huge win for us, right? Like we didn't. There was no way that I'd be watching the Lakers Heat last night if it wasn't for someone saying, hey, we have this asset, like we need to be cognizant of what's going on in the world, but we think we can make it safe for folks and, give people an opportunity to view sports that they love, which I thought was a huge win. I think, taking a step back, and Ben would probably be, one to speak to this more specifically, but, Disney made a lot of its money off of, linear TV rights, ABC, ESPN, and they used a lot of that to finance different ventures, buying Pixar, buying Marvel, doing a bunch of these things that I think were, strategic bets on, hey, we need to expand the portfolio. And then, obviously taking things direct to consumer is going to disrupt some things at Walt Disney Television, right? But overall, I think you got to think about, where the company's going. I'm not the ideas guy. I'm the let's go in a room and make some money guy. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Ben, if you have some thoughts on kind of how we've had to make some bets and make some trades across the company to try to drive value. I don't know if you think about that in your planning process.
Yeah, it's interesting. I, from a media standpoint, given my short tenure, right, in the media business, I don't know if I've got deep thoughts on that yet, but certainly we are leveraging the collection of assets that we've got in order to open up more doors and more opportunity down the road.
If I may, you had said something about what we're doing in the music industry at the beginning of your question, John. A very big part of our community is the large festival scene in Europe. And what we're seeing with artists there is sort of that exclusive opportunity to be what normally was a 130,000 person festival is now shrunk down to what they're doing. They're setting up cocktail tables with little circles on that. You can't leave that space. And people are going to these events and they're paying a much higher ticket price. I don't think it's enough to compensate for $130,000 head at festivals every week all summer long. But it is, I think, how I feel about it is like, imagine we're all in a startup together, the entertainment industry. And when you're in a startup, you just have to be scrappy and try all these different things. And so that's what, I mean, there's a rising artist, his name is Active Rage, he's out of Amsterdam. He just did a show on high dives in a swimming pool, and with all these different high dives, and different musicians were on different platforms and people were diving into the water, and it was live streamed and people were able to make requests, and it was, a video of a fan making a request. So, we're thinking outside of the box. And it's just this moment in time where you get that rare opportunity to pay a little bit higher of a ticket price and be in the room. And those are some of the most special concerts I've ever been to, is that small private concert in somebody's home or in their backyard when it's 100 people. And that's the artistic opportunity we have. How we're going to make money from that, I think we're still working on, to be really honest. But we're a startup all over again, is what it feels like to me.
Well, that kind of addressed a question that was coming from Brooke. She asked you, Emily, with the forced use of virtual contacts in your industry, what are the upsides for developing new revenue streams for artists? So what other areas may an artist feel like they can find a way to make some money? I see this with that artist there. Is there other places that you're seeing opportunities for people that would find their way to make some money during these times they can't perform in a large venue?
Well, I guess I can speak for myself on what I'm doing. So I had just written this Broadway musical, and we were in pre-production, getting ready to start. There's a very clear pathway to Broadway. You start at a small theater like Geffen, and then you go maybe La Jolla, and et cetera. Well, all of that got just, pre-production for everything in development is just crushed. So the new venues I'm exploring are, I'm rewriting the entire thing. And I think that's part of what we have to be willing to do, is go back to the creative desk, not just find new distribution channels for what we've already made, but how do we create differently as well? So I'm rewriting the entire musical from first person perspective. It was a 25-person cast. I'm rewriting it as first person, which is completely new creative. And then we'll release it as an audio music book on channels like Audible and, Smashwords, iBooks. And then the next phase is to add video. So it'll be, before that, podcast, and then video, like a YouTube series, a Quibi series. And then maybe I'll do it as a one-woman show with a live stream, maybe a one-woman show in theater, so you're not dealing with a bunch of people on stage together. And hopefully that pathway will eventually lead me again to Broadway. So that's just an example of finding new windows. And I think taking advantage of those new windows also requires new creative. I don't know if that really answers the question, but that's what I'm experiencing as an artist.
I think that's great. Hey, Ben. Hey, Ben, kind of along that vein, I guess the question would be on a studio front as planning is happening both on the television, motion picture side. You know, everything always has kind of its path. You know, you start looking for new development. You actually go to possibly a pilot season, you know, in the more network sense. And then you go into full-scale production, and you know, so that kind of path to stardom or path to success is certainly been altered with shutdowns and just again, kind of back to the financial reasons of being in business in general. How do you see the studio kind of managing the flow? You know, is there the same pent up reason to be in high scale, high end development right now, or is it kind of like, look, we already have these things kind of in the path, and we need to slow ourselves down and let things kind of catch up? Like, what's happening on that front? Do you know, or is there a plan?
Yeah. So, well, it feels like a lot has been, whatever can be continued, whatever could have been continued through the pandemic has been. So a lot of the development work, right, continues on in anticipation, right, that the demand is going to be there down the road. We're going to need, you know, to get the content created and out there, right? So it feels like, rather than a slowing down, it feels like more of we've got a bit of a backlog, right? And we're going to work through that backlog as fast as possible, right? And I think the complicating factor, of course, then is all of these new safety protocols, right? So the testing that has to take place, who gets tested, how often they get tested, the, you know, other, you know, equipment and other measures that have to be taken to ensure that everything is done safely and in a healthy way. And does that extend sort of the production periods, or does it in fact compress them, right? So a lot of that is we are in the midst of kind of learning that process. But from my read, right, everything is, you know, kind of full steam ahead, trying to get you know, as much content created and out there as we can, right? Because I think we believe, we have confidence, right, that in the sort of the development team, the deals we've done, we've got the potential to create a lot of great content. And again, that, you know, is going to be the driver of value for us over the long term. And so I think the investment continues to be strong there, and trying to get that back to normal as soon as possible.
Well, so I want to ask kind of a question that I'm intrigued by here from Angelica. And I think it is so fitting, because we've all been surprised by how our lives have changed during this time, and what we appreciate more, and maybe how little, in many ways, or how little we really need in order to make ourselves happy. You know, without all of the extraneous things that we've always had at our fingertips, you know, we've kind of been confined to our homes in a lot of ways. What has been in each of your areas the biggest surprise that has been a success during this pandemic, is her question. And why don't we start with you, Chris?
Man, I really didn't want you to start with me. I wanted to start with Emily, and then I wanted to think
Okay,
about
Emily,
Emily, will you go? Emily's eyes lit up. I felt like she had something, and then I need to go.
All right.
You go.
Emily, what's the biggest surprise for you during this that has turned into an opportunity versus, you know, a woe is me?
Well, I think I think Ben said it earlier, content is king, right? Everything's based on content. And what I found is the business side still has to catch up, but what has happened is a creative explosion. And there is a catharsis that happens through creative expression. And one of my friends says that culture is reflected in its art. And what is happening, I think maybe we could all say, for the last 20 years, our art has had a lot of materialism, we're entertained by violence, you know, like maybe the content isn't reflective of what we really want to see in the world. And what I'm seeing is the content that is being created is more hopeful, it's more inclusive, it's more personal, it's more deeply emotional, and it's real. And so I am hopeful that that's been the most surprising thing for me, is how much people are just pouring out the depths of their hearts and souls with a hope for a better world, a more unified world. And so I feel like that's our opportunity, that we can do something with all of that creative catharsis and share it with the world. And I think that's the opportunity.
Well said.
Yeah, that was much better than my answer would have been. I'm a
We're
little
all in
like,
this together.
but I guess I'll go back to Emily's point. I think one of the most surprising things I think through the pandemic is obviously people are going through so much, particularly in California, you know, homeschooling small children, obviously, you know, a recognition of, you know, a race disparity in the country, you know, horrific wildfires. And I did see a lot of unity amongst like our team, particularly, and just thinking about each other. Bunch of us are from different backgrounds, you know, like I'm a kid from Salt Lake, and, you know, there's a kid from Southside Chicago, a kid from East LA. And like, I think we all kind of rallied around each other, and we're like, hey, you know, your kid's crying, like, we understand that, you go take care of that. Like, you know, everybody was kind of, you know, and I'm sure Ben's enduring this too. Like, I think the team aspect of at least corporate life, like, definitely understand why you need a team and kind of like leaning on each other. So I'm stealing a little bit of what Emily said.
It's fascinating to me what didn't stop, right? Like, there's just this catastrophe around us in so many ways, right? And you really see these fascinating little parts of the business that come to the forefront. You're like, boy, we can lean on that right now, right? I mentioned at the very beginning, right? Animation kind of kept steaming along, right? And there's some great content out there, right? And if I bring it to a more personal level, right, and my team specifically, right, you know, I'm sitting at this desk in this corner of my bedroom doing the same thing I did before and able to do it effectively, right? I mean, maybe it's not perfect. There's some downsides, sure, right? But at the end of the day, right, we were able to sort of continue doing what we do, right? And I was pleasantly surprised by that, and, you know, finding a lot of value in that for me and for my family, and I think my team is in certain ways, right? And there's a lot that goes into that topic for a different day, right? But again, I've been surprised by what can continue, right? What we've been able to do while under kind of these stressful and chaotic circumstances.
One more thing with that to add on, yes, and to what you both said, is that the global world has become so much smaller because of venues like this. And we're creating, I mean, I'm creating with people all over the world, and their culture and their different ideas and the different ways they see the world and experience the world are now blending with our creations. And so the world has become smaller, even by us being in that corner in our bedroom, because we can still work together and create together. It's not perfect, like you said, but yeah, there's something really special about that.
Agreed.
Well, we're getting close to wrapping it up, and I think you know, we have a lot of alumni and students that are on this call with us. What advice do you have, each of you, to them? Say they're wanting to break into the business, they're wanting to navigate their futures. Would you have any words of wisdom for how to find your way into our industry that it has its challenges, but still has, you know, such great opportunities for so many people to find really great employment and a really good career? Would like to take that. Chris, I'm saving you for last.
I'll chime in on that, right? I don't know if I'll call it wisdom, right? But Emily said it a couple of times, be scrappy, right? Put yourself out there, reach out, you know, and when you reach out, don't be discouraged by some rejection, by some failure, right? Keep at it, right? There are, you know, being alumni of this university, there is a wealth of people out there who would happily talk to you and provide guidance and share their experience and give you encouragement. And so reach out, connect. It's still possible in this environment. It's funny, my team, one of the questions we wrestled with early in these kind of Zoom settings was, well, how do we network now, right? How does that happen? And we invited leaders, various finance leaders in our organization to come to my team meetings and talk to them a little bit about it, right? And without fail, all their advice is just do it, right? Just pick up the phone, set up the video call, do whatever you need to do, right? Make the connection. Sure, you're not sitting down at a table having coffee, but you can still talk. You can still make that connection. And so work on making those connections, and that'll help you, formulate your a plan and a way to get into the industry.
I guess I'm next. First, I love Disney. One of our favorite PwC clients. I almost went to work for you. I was very, very close. I would say listen to your passion and trust it. And even if you feel like you're on the front of the wave and you might nosedive, it's not such a bad place to be an early adopter. Think outside the box, take a risk, and trust yourself. It's okay to take the road less traveled by, and you might find yourself in, Chris or Ben's position, or you could end up running a crazy, scrappy startup like me. But the U has an incredible network, and I think take advantage of that. And, we are all here for each other.
Yeah, kind of to echo what Ben and Emily said, I was obviously didn't have a global pandemic, but had a global housing crisis, and the economy was in the toilet when I came out of grad school. And it was definitely very similar to probably what a lot of you guys are going through right now. And the best piece of advice I got is just one more. So make a connection and, reach out. I'm sure Ben would and Emily would say the same thing. My email is super easy, christopher.hill@disney.com or at espn.com. Send me an email. I will find some time and, say, hey, is there somebody else you think I should talk to? That's all it takes, right, is one. And that was the best piece of advice I got. And kind of to Emily and Ben's point, you may get out and it may not be, your ideal job, but you kind of see that vision, what Emily was talking about. And, you just never know where your career will take you with a little bit of hard work and perseverance.
Well, thank you to Ben and Chris and Emily for your commitment to what you guys are doing and your passion for your jobs. It comes through obviously greatly, and it's all because of the University of Utah, I'm sure, and what they've instilled in all of us. And thank you to everyone who's listening in and all the questions you had. I think it's been a good panel. And I think you just keep reaching for the stars, everyone. That is all we can do. And, we're in great industries. And, as a result of that, you can have passion to do it even in the toughest of times. I'm going to turn this back over to to Megan. And I guess I'm turning it over to Megan. If we could stop our video on each of ours, then.
Thank you all so much. That was an incredible discussion. And I know I speak for everybody viewing when I say we all really enjoyed it. You were fantastic. So just a few housekeeping things before we wrap up today. We want you all to continue tuning in each week for our Eccles Alumni Road Trip. Next week, we're going to be taking the week off to watch, and we hope you'll join in with us. The vice presidential debate will be hosted here on our University of Utah campus at Kingsbury Hall. Be sure to tune into that instead of our road trip next week. It'll be on TV, whatever channel you prefer, at 6 p.m. Pacific time. So make sure to tune in and enjoy that historic event. Of course, the week after, we're going to be back with our Alumni road trip talking about leadership through crisis. So join us Thursday, October 15th from 12 to 1 o'clock p.m. In the Texas time zone. We're inviting all of our Texas alumni, as well as all of you who have tuned in today to join us for that. You can RSVP at eccles.link/road trip for all of our upcoming road trip events. And last but not least, don't forget to mark your calendars. We are so excited for our annual 1917-minute challenge. We need all of you to join in with us, help us spread the word, and get 750 donors in 1,917 minutes to support our students who are just so deserving. So you can learn more about that at eccles.link/1917challenge. Again, thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to our incredible panel and of course to our generous sponsor, CR England. If you are enjoying these discussions and these panels, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and come back every week. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great afternoon. Go Utes!